All right, today I have 5 methods for us to identify if a song major or minor. So my first 3 strategies are melody only. If you only have a melody to look at, what are the clues to look for to know if a piece of music is major or minor? The next one, I have some harmony specific tips. So chord progressions, things like that. What are we going to look for? What clues might be there? And last but not least, your ears. What are we going to use with our ears, our most powerful tool? And I have some secrets for you, even if you think you don't have a great ear. What are some things we can do that are foolproof to help unlock is it major or minor by listening to it? By the end, you'll quickly and confidently be able to identify if the music is a major or minor. And the reason this is so important is that so often my students are just going to look at a key signature right at the bat and say, it's major. But there's a 50-50 shot. It could just as easily be minor, right? So what are the things, what are the clues we're going to look for in the music to help us identify, right? So for instance, this is my favorite example. When you see this word on the screen, what word do you think this is? I'm guessing most of us on this channel are going to say, oh, that's a bass guitar, bass frequencies, bass singer. But it could just as easily be bass, right? Bass fish, right? It just depends on context for what is this word actually. And they mean very different things, right? So what are the clues besides just this word that you're going to look for in the sentence that you're going to listen for? So if you're new to the channel, I teach a lot of practical ear training and music theory tips just like this. So if you want to learn more, consider subscribing. But let's dive in. All right, so my first strategy is the final say, meaning we're going to look at the ending notes. And again, we're looking at melody-specific tips for these first 3 strategies, right? So going to look at in the melody, what is the ending note? So in this example, I have 2 flats, so it could be flat major, or just as likely, it could be G minor, right? And the beginning doesn't really tell us a whole lot, and it's starting on the D there, right? But if I go to the ending, I'm going to say, oh, there's my G. Okay, to that point, it probably sounds more like G minor. Another one with 2 flats, again, B flat major or G minor. And if I look at the end here, okay, this time I ended on B flat. Okay, there's point now for B flat major. And just to foreshadow the beginning, right, F to B flat, right? This is going to be a thing to look for later when we get to melody tips. So keep that in mind. The next strategy, the power note, meaning the leading tone. This is going to be the note that really leans and shows us that it is a minor key. So for instance here, when I'm thinking of C major versus A minor, the biggest thing I'm looking for is that leading tone in A minor, meaning scale degree 7 to scale degree 1. So for instance, in C major, I have this C as my home note where B wants to go to C, right? As my B is my leading tone, my 7th scale degree really wants to lean back to C. In A minor, however, I have the G sharp as my leading tone, as my raised 7th that is a half step away from A. So whatever key you're in, you're looking for that half step relationship between the home note and a half step down, wanting to lead us back to the home note, right? And it's going to be a note that's going to be raised up out of the key signature of the natural minor key, right? So for instance, with this melody, right, key signature, no sharps or flats, so C major or A minor, and if I go to the end, oh, it ends on a C. So the reason I'm including this to kind of counteract the first strategy is that to show you that there's a lot of things you want to look for. It's not automatically what is the last note. All right. So what other things are we going to look for? Okay. Are there any G sharps to help us lead the way? And we see quite a few G sharps here that are leading us back to A minor. Or this one sharp, G major or E minor. I look at the, say, beginning. Oh, well, that is a G. But then the end, okay, point E minor, right? So I'm looking for then what is the leading tone? Half step away from E would get us to the D sharp here, right in the middle, right? So that's leading us back to E. Another one with 2 flats, right? If it was going to be G minor, I'd be looking for a half step below G gets us to F sharp. So do I see a bunch of F sharps? And I do, right? So there's a lot of F sharps there. And if we even look at the end, it ended on some G's. That's good. And I also included this to show you there's this E natural as well, because it's really common to have a raised 6 in addition to that raised 7th that have been raised up out of the natural minor scale, right? So very common to have what we call the melodic minor. Next strategy are just some other melody tips. What melodic gestures, melodic patterns are we going to look for? So here, 5-1 is a very, very common melodic jump that often happens at the beginning. All right, so for instance, in C major, that would be the C and G relationship. So most often it'd be like a G jumping up to a C like this. But if it was A minor, we might say, okay, well, the fifth is then going to be an E. So a lot of jumping back and forth between an E and an A and get something like this. So when I look at this melody, it could be F or D minor based on the 1 flat in the key signature. The ending note of this particular expert doesn't tell us a lot, ending on C. All right, but if I look at right out of the gate, there's this nice 5-1, and I include this because it's such a common one, you'll want to know it. So for this one, we're actually only looking at the first half of the melody right now. So I did this because this ending note, D, right? Okay, maybe we're thinking D major. But if on closer inspection, we say, oh, we have a 5-1. We have the F sharp to B right out of the gate. If we look later, there's another 5-1. And then when we have the second half included, we look further, we see another F sharp to B. Oh, we also see a leading tone. We have the A sharp, right, wanting to lead back to B, and it even ends on B, right? So quite a few clues leaning towards B minor instead of D major, like we might have first thought. So another super common thing is to look for an arpeggio, especially arpeggios of the 1 chord or the 5 chord, especially in the melody, right? So my 1 chord C, E, G, or my 5 chord G, B, D, for instance, if we're in the key of C. If we're in A minor, however, right, we would have the 1 chord A, C, E, of course, or the 5 chord E, G sharp, B. So do we see 1 or 5 being arpeggiated in the melody ever? So let's take a look at some melodies with arpeggios, right? And we can see from here, we have some arpeggios of G, right? Quite a few actually. And we also have some arpeggios of 5 as well. So, right. So just from the melody having arpeggios, we can see a lot of G major hints. Or this one, we might say, okay, 4 flats, A flat. It even ends on an A flat. But on closer inspection, you see right out of the gate, we have some 5-1 hinting towards F. We also have that leading tone leading back to F. And we have giant arpeggios right out of the gates of the 1 chord and the 5 chord, hinting more at F minor. Before getting to the last 2 methods, just for hanging out with me today, I have a free gift for you. Go to joshring.com to get your free music theory survival guide. Wherever you're at on your music journey, you'll find it super helpful. It has a circle of fifths and a whole lot more to help you. So far, we've only been considering the melody. But when you have the harmony also, those first 3 strategies actually gain even more power. What I mean by that is that when we consider the final say, meaning the final note, right, is there also a final chord that is the 1 chord that matches that harmony? Or when you have the power note, do you see the leading tone in the harmony? Maybe it doesn't exist in the melody, but maybe the harmony has that leading tone all over the place, especially in that 5 chord. So even the melody tips, do you see any 5-1 leaps or any arpeggios of the 1 chord in the harmony? Those are some really great things to look for. So unpacking some specific harmony tips, we're going to look at specific chord progressions, meaning the relationships of the chords and how they fit. So what I mean by that, 1, 4, and 5 are arguably the most common chords you might encounter in tonal music, right? And we kind of had that when we were looking at melody arpeggios, having the 1 and the 5. But 4 is also super common. So meaning if we're in the key of C, right, the C chord's super common, but having the 4 or the 5 is also super common to get us back home to 1. All right, but when we're in A minor is going to be obviously super common to have, but you could just as easily have a lot of D minor and E chords that again want to point us back to 1, right? So look for 1, 4, and 5 and analyze the harmony. And again, 6 and 2 are also very common chords, depending on what style of music you're listening to. I see a lot of songs these days that are just 1, 4, 5, and 6, right? So things to watch out for. But I think 1, 4, and 5 are just the most common and will get you most of the way there. So if I had this chord progression, for instance, I'd say, oh, maybe D minor starts on a D minor. That's a good place to start. But then obviously B flat, F, and C still all exist in D minor, but they're not as common harmonies as, say, if it was F major, we would have the 4, 1, and 5. And this is such a common chord progression, actually starting on the 6th chord. So don't just automatically assume that first chord is the key you're in, right? A really popular song that has this exact chord progression is actually 21 Guns by Green Day. It has this exact chord progression starting on the 6th chord. Another common one that starts on F, you say, well, maybe this is still F major, and because it even ends on 5, which is very common, and okay, D minor is 6, but then we get to the G and we don't have a great way to look at that. That's diatonic. Yes, it's a secondary dominant, 5 of 5, but maybe the more likely options is that's just C major with a 4, 2, 5, 1, which is again a very, very common chord progression. And this is also super helpful when you have music that likes to modulate, meaning we've changed keys later in the music. So for instance, you might say, okay, 1 sharp, that's got to be G major or E minor. But then you say, okay, wait, this was a Mozart piano sonata, and he's not one to stick in the same key for very long. And we are here at now measure 33. So this is quite a bit of ways into this little movement here. And so if you looked at the harmonies, you'd say, oh, there's a lot of G minors and D7s here. Maybe I've changed keys. The key signature might not mean as much anymore because I've modulated. So this particular 4 measures is actually in G minor because of the 1 and 5, right? The G minor and D7 there. Or another piece of music here, we have now 1 flat. Okay, you might be tempted to say F major or D minor, really good options. But then you say, oh, this Lucatelli is a Baroque composer, meaning he was 300 years ago. 300 years, right? They might not have standardized the key signatures like we might have them today. And so we're going to look at the harmonies here. We see a lot of like G minor, C minor, D7. That actually hints more to then G minor. So the key signature isn't standardized to what we're used to. So this is especially important to look at the overall harmony when determining is it major or minor. And you can get something like this where it's actually G minor. You can see there's a lot of 1, 4, and 5 here. All right, and we'll get to that E flat 7. That's what's called an augmented 6th chord. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Maybe I'll make a video diving more into that. So the last thing is maybe the most daunting for some of us is to use your ear, which is really your most powerful tool. And some of us are just so tempted to say, I don't have a good ear, I can't do this. And that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what I want you to do is get in the mindset of you do have a good ear. You just maybe need a little training to figure out how to use it better. Sometimes you're not allowed to use your ear. You're not able to. You have to do some sight reading for school or your teacher or something. So the first 4 tips are great things to do for that. But if you are able to use your ear, you can use everything we've been talking about so far in combination with your ear, and it makes it so much more powerful. All right, so for instance, when you're looking at the ending, when you're looking at the final melody note and the final harmony, does it sound resolved like this? Or does this kind of float in the air a little bit like this? Or when you're looking at the leading tone, when you see those chromatic notes, those accidentals all over the place, are they pointing us back to home? Does it sound like a home note like this? Or when you're looking at melodic fragments, does it sound like it's reaching home? Or are there other melodic fragments like this mi, re, do or me, re, do, right? Those kinds of things like 3 Blind Mice, right? What are you listening for? Or with harmony tips, which chord sounds most like home? Or that 4-5-1, does it sound like you've reached home afterwards? So the final thing that you can do to just really use your ear is sing along a little bit with it. And not all of us are singers. I'm not a singer, but you can sing along with it, hum along with it, and just walk up and down the scale until you reach home. And then you can go to the piano or whatever and see, okay, is that the home note? And especially in like popular music, the chorus often ends on the home note. So sing along when it gets to the end of a verse or a chorus. Have they reached home, right? All right, so let's just use this melody and we'll see, using all the tips before, what can we unpack? So looking at the key signatures, C major or A minor. Looking around, I have that B flat, which is honestly maybe a bit confusing, but I do have a G sharp, and I know that, okay, the G sharp would then go up a half step to get us to A, so there's a point A minor. And then the ending note is E, so that doesn't tell us a whole lot, to be honest. And so we'll take a listen in a minute. But do I have any melodic fragments? Do I have 5-1? Okay, there's E to A, there's a 5-1. And if I then look around, I see another A to E, another 1-5 there. And some other melodic fragments, I might say, okay, well, I have this C, B, A. Okay, let's listen. Does that A sound like home when I get there? Right? As opposed to a C, doesn't sound like home, right? Does this A sound like home? Right? And I think when I get to the E, we really want it to land on the A, as opposed to when I do that, I land like on a C afterwards. So kind of getting into it. What does a C sound like? And to me, when I hear that, it really just wants to walk down to A, right? So that's what I mean. Improvise a little bit with it. You can sing up and down to find where is home. So question of the day, what strategy that we talked about today has been the most helpful? Let me know in the comments below. How do you like to identify if music is major or minor? And remember, sometimes you, the community, have the best ideas. So don't forget to check out the comments below and add your voice too. And before you go too, don't forget, go to joshring.com/free for your free music theory survival guide. It has the circle of fifths and a whole lot more. I think you'll find it super helpful. And maybe you're just in a place of you're trying to figure out what are the possible minor keys, and you're just not as fast as identifying minor keys as you are major keys. And I would argue most of us are probably in that boat. So if you want to identify minor key signatures even faster, I have a video here that outlines 10 great strategies for how to get to all your minor keys lightning fast. So check it out here. So thanks. Have a great day.